I'll take that.
Let's see here.
Watch us all get jambled. We're all labeled wrong, and we got Paver's King logo and all that stuff, all that fun stuff.
Gonna come up to be like
that guy's
Paver
West Coast,
Queen.
man.
Oh, and we are live here. So this is great. Perfect. We're looking good. And we've got the official sound of the round table rally coming up right here. There it is, if you heard that. We'll get started here talking about the first consultation. And I figure we'll get started talking about the beginning, the middle, and the end of that first consultation. That is, setting up for communication, meeting the customer on site, and then deciding afterwards if that's a customer you want to take on or not, or wherever you take it from there, preparing that quote. So I figure we'll start off really quick to make sure that everyone's going to have a chance to talk here and ask you guys, what do you do to set up that communication? So you've scheduled that appointment for that first consultation with that client. What do you do to communicate prior to that first consultation? Because I've shown up to consultations before and the customer or the client may not have been there, or the client just completely forgot. And that's when I realized I need to set up something to make sure that they're there, or to make sure to communicate with them that I'm showing up at this time, hey, and text them, whatever. So what's your method? Really quick, 1 minute. What do you do to communicate with that client to ensure that they know and that they are prepared for you to come? We'll start up at the top left. Jeremy at J Squared Outdoor.
Well, shoot, I think most of the time I try to call people ahead just to remind them, hey, I'm coming. And well, I think, it's important too to, when you're vetting your clients, make sure you're meeting with people that are excited. And if it's someone that doesn't seem real excited about the job, that might forget about you, you can probably pick that out on that first phone call. So, before you're even setting up consultations, you want to make sure that it's good people that are good jobs for you, and kind of get that out of the way. But I always like to give people a shout ahead of time. Just, hey, I'm going to be there tomorrow. We're going to talk about your patio, and just kind of get a feel for them that way. And generally, I don't have people flaking on me that way.
Absolutely. And Tony at Zamco Group, tell us what you do.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'd say the last year, just because of the influx of demand that we've all been seeing, I've kind of changed my process a bit, and I'm still changing and I'm still kind of adapting to it. But I've signed contracts without ever even stepping foot on site, just because we were so overloaded. Obviously with contingencies that, if there's height variances or anything. But yeah, I mean, essentially now what I do is I speak to the client initially over the phone. I ask them, basic questions about their project first to see if it's even a project that's I wouldn't say worth doing, but if it's our type of project, if we're the right contractor for that client. And I have them email me their certificate of localization. I basically have them send me all the info that I would need, all the documentation I would need to go to the next step, just to see how prepared and how serious they are. And once I've done that, I could kind of filter out the ones that are like, oh yeah, well, can you just give me a price? Like, look, that's not how I work. But, if you find your documents, give me a call, because that person's not serious. Or I tell them, do you have a plan? Because now I put my foot down. I will not bid on anything without a plan. And do you have a plan? Sometimes they do. Yeah, I had one made, or my pool contractor put one together. Okay, that's fine. I can give you a price, a preliminary quote, just off of that square footage. But if you actually want, because to vet out the clients that are just calling for ideas and kind of shopping and having fun with it, I don't give my ideas unless they're paying me for a plan. And that's it. So look, if you have a plan, I'll give you a quote, and then from there you'll be able to see if I'm too expensive for you or if I'm in your budget, and then we can move on to the next step. But that's how I've been doing it, and I've been really able to pre-qualify the clients better that way.
Over to you, Craig Scheller at Scheller Outdoor Living.
So I had one where I went to the other day where I'd set up the appointment like 7 or 8 days before. So
I just sent a quick text that morning just to make sure that we were still on, and she was like, "Yep, sounds good. My husband will be there. I'll be coming in, from work or whatever." So I think just following up, especially if it's a few days in advance, making sure that I like to have both parties there if possible, the decision makers, so that we can get both sides of what they're looking for. So I usually try to set up times and make sure that both of them can be there for that.
Absolutely. And on to Matt Hiner at _Yardist and Hiner Outdoor Living. Oh, you're muted, Matt.
There we go. What's up, everybody? So I make sure that everybody sends me photos. So my first consultation is either via Zoom or just on the phone. So we're looking at their yards. I'll fly in with Google Earth, and we'll talk about every aspect that we would talk about in their yard. And I'm just doing that over the phone. So we're touching on price before I go out there. We're touching on everything. And they know that they're going to pay me for a design. So by the time I get there for that first meeting, I want to stuff, because we've gotten some of that business, all the business stuff out of the way. We've touched on budget to make sure we're in the right realm, that they know that we can have a high, medium, or low space just based on finishes that we want to use. And they're going to know that they're going to be paying me for a design before I leave to get to a final quote.
On to Dan Wasson at the.dan.wasson and Wasson Nursery on Instagram. Oh, I think you're muted too, Dan.
All right. There I am. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So when we set an appointment and it's like far ahead of time, we will do a call ahead, usually maybe a couple days before, or maybe that morning, especially like we look at weather, like the past snowstorm that hit. We had a bunch of appointments, and it's always good we're thinking ahead. It's convenient for the homeowner. We can say, hey, it looks like there's a lot of snow. It's cold out. Let's push this thing back a couple weeks or whatever. So, but to answer that question, yeah, that in that initial call, when it gets set up, they do, the secretaries and the coordinators do run through a prompt of, do you have this? Do you have a site plan? And are you aware there's a design fee and all that? And that's kind of talked about first, and then we set that appointment, and then then we that's when we would do the call ahead deal.
Absolutely. On to Mike at Paver _King.
So I quickly refer any kind of leads to the women, because that's the best way to deal with it. I'm incompetent, so so we have two. So Kelly, who's our office manager, depending on the lead, and Nancy, who's our designer. So when today, two leads came in. One was a pool company we work closely with that has had about 15 poolscapes they're doing this year that they can't install landscape, so they've asked us to step in. So the pool lead went to Nancy, because she's obviously a senior designer and has worked with me for 10 years. And another lead came in. It was a phone call from our website, and it was someone who's looking to re their patio and extend it, like take all the existing pavers away and extend the patio. So, Kelly's, my wife's only been doing this with us for a couple of years, so she took that lead. It's a good lead to learn on. It's a good lead to get to know someone, and she has to do some real on-site experience. So I kind of split them that way. And then the lead with Nancy, that's obviously a big job referred to us from a pool company that we put a lot of importance on. So I'm going to attend that meeting, and Nancy's going to manage me to be there. And then she'll manage the client as well, because I'm not good at those things. So I have sort of diluted myself out of that, because I'm not great at making sure that I show up or people show up. So now Nancy and Kelly make sure that those two things happen for us.
Smart, putting the people in place. And on to Caleb Auman at Auman Landscape LLC.
Hey everybody. So this year, and I think like Tony was saying, it's like for us and probably like everybody, it's an ever evolving template that we're going off of, how to best facilitate meeting with clients. And our big thing this year is really vetting probably I might be vetting a little too hard to an extent to where it might be not negative to the company, because we really are like, I think we might be the smallest company in the room here. I don't know, but like I have very little time to go out and look at leads that are questionable. So I'm really putting my efforts on referrals, like really hard. Leads that come in just from our website or just a cold lead. I'm really vetting those hard, frankly. So I am getting down to business as far as budget, pretty tactfully, of course, but as rapidly as possible. Tactfully, again, of course. Budget expectations. Is there a plan already? What are their thoughts on paying for a plan or just a simple sketch? Asking for, I think Tony or Hiner was saying, text photos of the area, email, an address so I can figure out the neighborhood, a lot of things like that. So I'm really vetting pretty hard this year. Just trying to focus on our repeat business and our referral work more so than ever, and taking care of the people that repeatedly take care of us more instead of chasing some of the dead leads. So that's the philosophy this year. Last year it was different. The year before that was slightly different. So we're always just trying to work through this and figure out what's working best. But this year, 2021, that's kind of the route we're going, is again focus on referrals and our good customers, I guess.
Definitely. So you guys have communicated, the proper parties have shown up. I want to talk about what you show up with that first consultation, or whoever is showing up to represent your business. What do they bring with them? And we're going to work in reverse order here. So Caleb, back to you. What do you show up with on that first consultation when you're meeting with that customer?
Our three primary things, of course, my job file on that customer, as much information as I can get off of, the county auditor's website, a footprint of the property, obviously all their contact info, all that stuff, the notes we had over the phone. I'm taking a zip level with me to capture grades on that trip, measuring wheel, all the basic stuff, paint, all those kind of things. We just started, we bought a new iPad, a really big one. Andy Mulder had this, one of the newer iPads, and then another designer we work with has a program called Morpholio and another program called Nearmap. And that's one we're adopting this year to try to do better, just field sketches and field presentation, for just quick little jobs. And that's something we're messing with. I think it's Morpholio. That's a really neat, and I'm really borderline incompetent and probably just full-blown incompetent when it comes to the integration of technology in the company, with especially graphic things like that. The Morpholio thing is really neat. You can really make some sharp looking just sketches really quick, especially if like this is the new iPad, so it's got a really good stylus with it, and that stylus has all sorts of different line weights that are available at your immediate disposal, so you can really sketch up some cool stuff immediately. So and in that way, we can get in the office and share files back and forth real quick, Britt and I. So, and just taking lots of site photos and all that stuff. So those are the items we're taking with us now.
Awesome. On to you, Mike.
Me?
Oh yeah, you, Mike, Paver King.
Okay. So I take nothing but Nancy or Kelly. That's what I bring to a quote, honestly. Like, I don't bring anything because I'm terrible at it. I'm good at communicating with people. I'm good at sort of making that initial rapport with a client, making a quick judgment. When it comes to bringing stuff, Nancy brings one of the like goofy zip levels. I don't know how it works. I don't understand it at all. I know everyone else loves them. I have a string line and a laser level, but Nancy brings her zip level to some of those jobs, and a notebook and a notepad, and she would take all the notes, and really I've downloaded that sort of communication of that kind of important stuff to her. And then Kelly would bring a notebook and stuff with her, and I would just sort of tag along. So, I bring Kelly or Nancy because they're far better at that than I am. It's not my skill, so I try to stay out of it. I take terrible notes. And I'm also not good at technology integration, much like Caleb. Horrible at it. So
maybe
and that S70 you drove to the job, there's no room in the cab for anything.
And after driving all night to get there at 10 kilometers an hour.
On to the Dan Wasson.
So much like Caleb will show up with a lot of all the measuring equipment. We do carry around a zip level. I think that's a necessity nowadays. Depending on what they want, because we've had a couple phone calls with them of like, what exactly they're wanting. We'll bring some pictures of some jobs that we've done in the past that might mirror what they're looking for. We'll bring some lighting books. We'll bring some paver books and maybe some samples if we kind of can get a heads up of really where they're going. So, and I always forget, this is kind of silly, I forget my own business card all the time. It's either on my desk or in my truck. So I got to do better with my own business card. But that's what we bring. Also a job folder. We have a job folder that asks tons of questions, not just for the homeowner, but for the designer to fill out, what's the grade? Are there gutters? Is there a septic system? Is there irrigation system? Is there a dog fence? So we have a full pamphlet of all kinds of questions that are silly questions but you can easily forget. Yeah. So we fill that out as well.
Definitely. On to the _Yardist, Matt.
Yeah, I'm like Caleb, my iPad Pro. That's all I bring anymore. I don't bring anything. I forgot my mask yesterday and I had to leave and go get one, but but no, the iPad has everything. I use the Concepts app, and I can sketch things out really well just to get some general ideas, just show them my competence. But really, I'll have the zip level, but I won't do that until I've gotten them to commit to a design. I'm really pushing, getting people to sign off on a design, and then I'll just set the stage that those are the tools that we'll use to make sure that we're putting a thorough job together in the design and the planning process. But the iPad has, I've got folders of photos, and sometimes I'll just bring up Instagram right there on the spot, just because that's got a lot of the photos right there that I can show them. And so, Concepts app. And we use Morpholio Trace as well. I just found it a little limiting for me from a design standpoint, but I will actually export my stuff to Morpholio because it's got some tools that Concepts has. There's no one size fits all for me just yet. So
excellent. And then Craig Scheller Outdoor Living.
I'm taking notes. This is pretty good. Well, I usually try to get I'll send a digital file of if it's a pool bid, I'll send the digital catalog basically so they can kind of select and see what we offer. And then sometimes I'll send a paver manufacturer catalog, but those can be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm trying to figure that out. But usually I'll take a catalog of a product we use a lot and kind of show some ideas in that. And then I definitely take my zip level. I take my measuring wheel. I just use a notepad that's graph paper, so I can do some measurements and sketching on there. Sometimes I'll leave not giving them anything, but kind of show them a concept of what I'm thinking on that pad, before I leave, and see if this is kind of what they're thinking. I do not do designs, so occasionally I'll take my contract designer I mentioned a couple weeks ago on here. I'll have her meet me if I know it's going to be a full design and they've already committed over the phone for that. We'll go together and do the meeting together. So it just kind of depends on the customer. I'm definitely like Caleb. I'm booking July and August already, so I'm very, very selective with how the meetings I'm taking, because my phone has been going crazy the last few weeks. So it's a good problem, but I'm definitely trying to be a little bit more careful with the visits I take, I guess.
Absolutely. Tony at Zamco Group.
Well, for me, I've hired my brother in the beginning of last season to take on sales. So I rarely do sales calls anymore. Honestly, it's about my workload is insane. I'm managing all the job sites. I'm doing all the designs. There's a lot of work already on a lot of my plate. So as far as the sales calls, I do almost everything over the phone. If I have to go see the project, if the client is serious, like I was saying earlier, I will go see them for sure. I'm going to go and present myself. I need to see heights, and I need to see if there's any, because I always ask them, is there anything I should know? are you a lot higher than your neighbor? And no, everyone's always at the same level. Everyone is always perfectly level with everything around them, miraculously. So I don't take that chance. And when I go, I figure that if I'm displacing myself, I'm going to bring my, I don't use a zip level, which I definitely want to get informed more about, because I see a lot of guys are using it, but I use, I have the Stabila laser level, and I use that to pull my heights and all that. So it gives me a good idea. And honestly, it's more of a show than anything. You pull out the tripod and it looks like a little spaceship when you turn it on, because it flashes like 4 different color lights. So the clients are always like, wow, that's, simple tools. So I'll bring that. I was looking into the Rethinkable, that sketch pad that you can write and it turns your writing into notes. I haven't purchased it yet, but in the meantime, I bought the Fusion, a Rocketbook. I think the Rocketbook Fusion. So I like that because I jot my notes and I could erase and all that, even though I'm in pen, and load them into emails. So now I bring my Rocketbook, my erasable notepad. I bring my laser level, always my Typo Block catalog, which, to solve the issue of the business card, because I had the exact same issue that I got on Vistaprint, I got stickers of my business cards made and I stick them to the catalogs. So it does 2 things. 1, the client has all your info on that big catalog instead of this little card. And 2, when they pull that catalog out in front of your competitor, if they're calling someone else, like, they know what's up. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, they know what they're up against. So it's kind of like, it's kind of a marketing tool as well, or it deters them, or it also allows them to say, you know what? We're known to have our price point, so they'll comfortably charge a bit more, knowing they might still come in under us, but it still allows us to have a smaller bridge between our price and their price. So I use it more strategically, the business card on the catalog. But yeah, aside from that, that's pretty much it. But I get almost all my info over the phone initially. It's I find there's a lot of, I don't know if it's the same thing in all the markets right now, but here it's like ton of people wasting our time, and I've almost lost the patience for it. And that's why I just push all the ones that I vet them before even talking to them. Like, this is my brother's type of client. They're going to be needy, and they might be a great client, but they're going to be needy, and I just don't have the patience for it anymore. So I just put them off on him, and he takes care of them really well. So yeah, but my brother has the iPad and everything. So we're kind of using a big mix of everyone's systems. It just depends on who's showing up on the job.
Gotcha. And on to Jeremy at J Squared Outdoor.
Mine is real simple. I just bring a notepad and my ears. And that's it. Just listen.
Perfect.
But I saw the design at that meeting, and then I have an assistant that goes back and measures and does site analysis with the zip level and all that kind of stuff. I notepad in my ears. That's all I take.
Interesting.
That's smart, because the time you're investing into the pulling the grades and all that while your assistant, you've technically already engaged them because they paid you for the design, right? So that's the best. That's kind of the best way to do it.
Yeah, I just don't have a lot of time to sit there and do all the documents. I just got to get and go. So
exactly,
and takes care of all that for me, which is nice.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, and it leads perfectly into our next segment, where this is the majority of it, and this is a free-for-all now, so I'm not going to call on you. Feel free to butt in when you want. What are you asking on the job site? Jeremy, if you're just coming with a notepad, I'm sure you're asking questions and just listening. And what are those questions that you're asking? What's that information that you're trying to pull from your customers? Feel free to butt in whenever you want. Feel free to ask each other questions if you have questions to dig further on each other's. But what is that information? What are those questions specifically that you're asking those customers that you are getting from them? And where do you take that?
What I found is very practical now, because I've had this conversation. We've had this conversation in the past, that the budget question is a very touchy subject for a lot of clients, where they feel like you're either calling them cheap or you're trying to see how much you could get out of them. So it's very touchy. So basically, I always start with how long are you planning to stay in this home? Because then you could segue into, okay, well, look, if you're planning, I mean, if your kids are young and you're planning to stay here 10, 15 years, like, where were you 10, 15 years ago? What were you doing? And they're like, yeah, it was a pretty long time ago. Yeah, it was a pretty long time. So let's understand that you're going to be here a long time. Maybe it's worth investing a little bit more into the project to really get what you want. You've already put them in the mindset of having a higher budget. That's a strategy that I've worked out without just straight up saying, you know, what are you looking to spend out here? Because they're a bit, when you're designing, they're more honest, I guess, because they know that they're going to pay for revisions. So, but when you're just kind of spitballing and throwing a quote, I think that's worked for me to gauge the client.
That's a really good way to get people in that mind frame to spend a little bit more money and kind of understanding who you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
We'll,
it's worked out. I mean, go ahead.
We'll start out with the normal questions, but before even that, we kind of, do we shake hands? Do we fist bump? With the whole COVID thing. So that's usually like a good segue for us to kind of break the ice. We kind of joke around with them, kind of get them talking before we really break into a lot of those questions. Find out if they have kids, what they like. It's always, it gets us on like a really personal basis with them. But, a lot of those questions, Tony, we ask a lot of the same questions, budget. We try to ask for budget because most customers' response to what the budget is, well, I don't know. And so we try to ask some other questions to get them thinking, like if I said X amount, how does that make you feel? So that's how we kind of get around the budget without asking for a budget. But then, I ask, what's their style? Do you entertain a lot? I like to, look at the inside of the house. Like I'm like, this is the view that you see the most. We don't see the view because we don't own the house, of course. So, what do you want to look at? And there's a lot of questions that I think of just randomly and spur of the moment that are probably site specific, so there's tons of questions, but I think the most important thing is trying to narrow in on what kind of budget they might be thinking about, or just get them thinking about that there's going to be a budget one day. And then also talking about like what their style is, what they want, how many kids do they have, how much are they going to entertain? Do they want the big grill? Do they want the small grill? Do they even like to grill? So we get pretty in depth with a lot of these questions because that really steers our design.
Well, I think a big part of it is nobody, none of us here are signing contracts, off of price at the end of the day. So I feel like we do have to ask specific questions, and it sucks to always come back to budget, but I feel like because we're all winning the projects because we're the better option, or that's how the client feels more comfortable giving it to us. It always comes down to budget at the end of the day, and you're kind of always asking questions, and you're bringing it back. But even though you stray away from it, it's like, okay, I want this, and you kind of, I have a tendency, and maybe it's a bad habit, to keep going back. Like, okay, well, you said you want to spend this, but then they're like, oh, and we would love a fire pit. Okay, but just so we could I just want to understand like where we stand, because fire pit, just let that's about like 8 to 10,000, and that's the big chunk of that budget that you were telling me earlier. And they're like, oh, okay. But now it's I've seen people where I've lost them there completely, where they're like, oh, okay, well, if that fire pit's 8 to 10, then I can only imagine what the rest of the project is. And at that point, like it's almost hard to, where you have to adapt your questions to bring them back in, right? So I feel like there's a lot of times, like Dan said, you come up on spur of the moment, you read the client, and every question is kind of client specific, or not every question, but there are questions that are client specific and site specific that you can't prepare for.
So
I had a project we bid it last fall, and it was a referral from one of my suppliers. And it was actually for a swimming pool, and so and it was close. It was really close to home, and so I went to the meeting, and we started talking about how they were going to use it. They have kids, grandkids, all their kids are out of the house. They want to be there maybe 5 years. We're kind of getting all that stuff, and then the size, and the backyard was fairly small. I was like, well, this is the pool we can get, if you want. And they wanted a fireplace and a patio and all this stuff. And I start talking about the budget and does this scare you and all this and whatever. And they were like, oh, I was approaching 100,000, and they were like, oh, we were thinking, 50 or something like that for all of that stuff, of course. So I just started asking them more questions. What's the purpose of the space? They were thinking fireplace. I was like, well, fire pit might be better if you have the grandkids over and you want to cook s'mores and everybody wants to gather around. And we sold them a really nice $30,000, patio out of that meeting. I didn't leave not getting any work. I got what they actually probably needed and wanted for the space in the yard for how long they were going to be there. So it turned out to be a win just because I kept working with them on what they actually wanted to get, what they actually wanted to do with the backyard. So sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But
Mike,
always asking a question.
You mentioned, Mike, or Paver King, you mentioned that you talked about having people in place for you, and they take care a lot of the initial consultation on the phone and leading into
the measuring and the recording of stuff.
Right.
Questions and the dealing with that's me. So
yes. So what are you doing on site in that initial consultation?
The first thing if I'm walking up, I've done anyways. I'm sure we've all done thousands of these things, but when I'm walking up to a house, the first thing I do is look at the front door, because in general, the front door will tell you all you need to know about that client. And I have encountered that most people that are getting landscaping, their front door has been changed recently, painted, has a big stained glass window. And as soon as they answer their door, I'm like, wow, man, your door is awesome. Love this door. And that gives me a huge amount of information about them and what they're willing to spend on things. If someone has a $10,000 front door, which exists, I know a lot about doors because I want to know what they've spent on that door. And once you compliment the door or the color of the door, it gets them off topic to the landscaping and it lets me get to know them. The other thing, the first thing, as soon as they open the door, I look at the shoes. I know that I close 80% of single women. And if all there is women's shoes there, I'm like, bang, I know this is good. Or I can tell how many kids are there by the shoes on the floor. I gather all that information without trying to ask them too many questions. But normally I take things like the first time Nancy came with me, she was like, you don't ever talk about landscaping. I'm like, I don't need to. Like I can get everything I need to know from them without asking awkward, weird questions or like, I struggle with the budget like everyone else, but at the end of the day, I still, I can usually judge what someone will spend on landscaping based on the other renovations they've done around the house. And that's what I spend more time looking at. But honestly, the front door gives me so much info right away. I just know if that's our client or not. I can almost tell by the front door and the shoes. There's been times I've looked at the front door and the shoes and then been like, yeah, I'm out. See you later.
It's like missing paint. Like it's flaking. Are you planning to change this though?
What kind of shoe does it for you?
It's not right. We're out.
You could start selling doors, I guess.
No. I probably want to talk about the landscape.
That get into decks or what is that?
Yeah, it breaks. Honestly, the door or even the garage door. A lot of people spend a lot of money on their garage doors. You can tell a good garage door from the road. Like if someone's serious about their house, they're serious about their garage door. Like those are garage doors, front doors. Those are things that people don't have to spend a lot of money on, but you can tell whether or not they care about style. And like there's all these funky like straight lines. Like if someone has like funky straight lines and really linear design in their stained glass on their front door, I know that's probably how they're going to want to carry their backyard. And those are the kind of products and ideas they'll bring up. If they have like a really intricate sort of like churchy, windy, loopy, curvy front door, then I know that that's where I'm going to take that design because that says everything about a person. Your front door when you go to the house, it's literally how they're greeting people that are coming to their house every day. So they care about it. Anyways.
Sales meeting tomorrow. I'm bringing this up to all the sales guys. Look at the door and look at
you got to write a book, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I need this information.
I have a bizarre way of looking at everything. It works. I can tell you. Look at the door. You'll know as much as you need about that person. And the shoes. You want to know if someone has kids? Look at the shoes. You want to know if there's a man in the house? Look at I learned that from a real estate agent. We were buying a house and we were looking at it and there was no men's clothes in the house. And he was like, oh, we can go low on this son of a bitch. Like, there's no men's clothes here. That means this is probably a divorce and we can probably get this house at a good rate. So I was like, wow, I should apply that. Like, so I look at all that, like, how much information can I gather without actually, I always try to keep them. I was talking to Caleb about this too. Like, I always try to keep people beside each other, not across from each other. I manipulate them so that they're not opposed, because that's a point of aggression when a couple's looking at each other. So you try to keep them, Nancy and I try to always keep them from, like, look, in that it's easier to get them to agree to stuff, especially on the first consultation. Like, do we want a pool? Do we not want a pool? They're not in a confrontational position with each other. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to use up all that time, but
Well, that's fascinating, and it's an angle that we haven't discussed, and maybe we'll come back to that. But Caleb, you mentioned that you spend a lot of time qualifying customers, so you're already asking them so many questions. What questions specifically are you asking them when you're on site in that initial consultation?
Well, first thing I'm looking at now is the door. That's for sure. But I've thought about that. Since he's been talking about it, I've been thinking about that, and the door thing that's interesting. So anyways, yeah, I'm really hung up on that, Mike. So you're amazing, dude. So, we're big on, budget, again, is always the magic question, right? And so one of the things I'll ask too is, when we're either in the qualifying stage or pre-meetings or during, is there a set of plans for this project? Have you had any other quotes? Are you anticipating what a project of this scope or nature, is going to cost? And, trying to draw that budget. I'm real big on that, because that's in our rural demographic, especially, like, there can be some very modest houses that are going to spend $45,000 or 60 or 70. And then, we've had some very nice properties that actually are the worst nickel and dimers, we've ever had, kind of deal. And so, just trying to tactfully, again, eke out the budget number, or at least a range, and say, well, projects like this we've done in the past hover around 45,000 ish or whatever. And one thing too, when people say I want a fireplace, they'll say I want a fireplace, I am immediately tacking down if they mean a fire pit or a fireplace, and make sure we're getting our nomenclature straight there, because $10,000 minimum on a fireplace, right? Versus $1,000 on a nice fire pit. So we're working through making sure we're understanding. Something we could have a really good conversation on one of these days, and Mike was alluding to it there, but his body language is a huge deal. And something I've noticed, I guess, to kind of go down a side thing, I'm watching this a lot when I'm talking to clients, or I'll catch myself when I'm talking to a client and say I'm not facing them, and I'll notice they keep leaning over to get in front of me as they're talking. I realize I'm not giving them my full attention with my body facing them. And you start watching body language like that, and it'll tell you a lot about what that client is like. They're really wanting to make sure they're conveying what they're talking to, too. So body language is something I'm watching a lot with how they're holding their arms, or, stuff like that. And so I'm always watching that. And, but again, back to asking the questions, your standard stuff. What is the space going to be used for? How many? How much, maintenance, all the basic stuff, really, because our projects aren't super elaborate like a lot of what do you guys install here. Some amazing work in this room that you folks do. So ours are a lot more simple style projects, and maybe I'm holding myself back, even in that realm of, just based off the questions I'm asking. I'm not going more advanced like that, but that's kind of the basic gist of what we're doing currently.
Matt, you incorporate a lot of water features, which is very, customizable. Not to say that, pavers and outdoor living spaces aren't, but what questions are you getting down to understand more about their interest in water features incorporated into their outdoor living space? Specifically, what questions are you asking your clients?
So one of the first things we'll do is I'll just want to start outside, and I know that they've got a lot of pent up anticipation for me getting there. So I want them to kind of just get everything that they wanted to say out. And so I invite them outside, and I just tell them, hey, let's get outside. Let's walk the property. I want you to walk and talk and just start picking out and pointing out all the things that you don't like or want to change or see. and that kind of stuff. And as we're doing that, I'll kind of, I'll wait for pain points and I'll poke the wound a little bit. And it's a lot easier to sell from plain than it is from pleasure. But then once we get to the backyard and just kind of, I'm going to ask loaded questions on how do you intend on using this space when we're all said and done? And I want to, I'll have follow-up questions like that. Like, okay, great. When you're entertaining out here, what's the average sized, dinner party that you might be hanging out here? Okay, 8 to 10. All right, what's the maximum party? Some people throw ragers. Some people say, oh, we have modest parties, and their modest party is 50 to 60 people, and because that's just their family and their grandkids, and that's just how many people show up. So I'm not going to give them a 200, 300 square foot patio if they're having 50 people over. I know from there that we're going to do that. Then I'm going to maneuver that conversation. All right, when you're sitting here, we've got a lot of views in Colorado Springs, and so a lot of people want to capture those views in the mountains from where they're at. So I'll try and turn their attention to an ugly side of the yard and say, hey, this is an opportunity for this or that, because the sun goes down, and have you thought about having a fire pit? Now you're sitting by the fire, you're listening to the water, the fish are swimming, you've got friends over, you're now, lost track of time. It's 1:00, you've got drinks, and you're just having the best, getting lost in conversation. I want to bring them to that place mentally and almost physically before we've even put pencil to paper. I want them to buy into the lifestyle that we're about to design for them, because it's an experience. So that's kind of what I'm going to try and do with that conversation.
Definitely.
Well, that's great, because it's exactly that. Sales is all psychological. Before anything, it's psychological. Like I said, nobody here is selling based on price. We're literally selling an experience. And it's exactly that. If you could get in the client's mind or get them into your mind, I've said this many times, is I want to understand the client, but I want to get them into my mindset. And most of the projects that I've signed, they've always said, oh my God, you know what? Honestly, we love your passion. Because I get very passionate, and once I get in their yard and I'm talking to them, like I'm very much the type that I'll, you know what, what would be amazing is this, and then I go over a story, something, because that's just how it comes out. It's not like a sales pitch or anything. That's how I am. So I'll be like, you know what? Actually, I had a client once that wasn't even sure about this, and they did it, and I went by, and next thing I know, I'm there till 2 a.m. having a glass of wine, this and that, and it's like, at this point now, they feel like they know you. They feel like they know a little bit about your personal life. So I think that's a big part, is to get them into your mind, not necessarily get into the client's mind.
My goal is to connect with them on a personal level too. I want them to feel like we're friends. I think one of my secret sauces is, I want to make them feel super special when they're working with me. Like they are the only people that exist when I'm there, and they've got my full and undivided attention. And then I am getting just as excited. It's important not to get more excited than they are as a project. I learned that mistake a couple of times early on, where you get bought in, like, oh, you want a water feature and a fire pit? And I just saw, a blank canvas, and I'd get too excited and blow the deal because I'd skip over the budget or something silly like that. But I like connecting with them on a personal level. And but I do want to add that, like, if you brand yourself and brand your company and start marketing yourself to not just the people that need your services now, but to the people that might need it in 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to start attracting the people that you want. And they're going to start coming to you, for your yard, for your look, and all that kind of stuff. It makes this whole process simpler, because if you're open, especially using your social media channel, and you talk about price and you talk about your process and you just talk about all of this openly, you're going to build that trust, and you're going to start from a foundation of trust. If we're starting from as strangers, then we have to do all of that work that I'm now putting 5 years ahead, because I'm trying to get them attracted to my media channels and get them on the boat and get them on the Hiner train years before they're ready to buy. So that way, when they're ready to buy, there are no competitors. It's me. They know what they've already got a budget established. They know that it's ready. Those are the best clients, because they want a Hiner job. They don't want just a backyard.
Matt, does that mean you said, marketing to those customers 5, 10, 15 years ago, does that mean hopping on TikTok and starting to grow that channel because, that demographic is going to start to expand and then incorporate, those older clients? What does that mean?
Paver King and I are having a party on TikTok right now. You guys need to join in.
Oh boy.
Yeah, no, I joined in TikTok. I'm still trying to figure it out. I just hired a full-time videographer. We're going into YouTube hard this year. Instagram really showed me the potential that social media truly brings if you really commit to it. And so I think that was one of the biggest game changers for us, because I was struggling, hovering at the $1 million mark for years and years and years. And then once I finally went all in on Instagram, most of my followers are in their 20s. They're not buyers. My average customer's, 50 to 60. But I refer everybody to Instagram. And once they see that and see all the excitement and the momentum we have behind that, they'll become raving fans. So
talking about building that relationship on site with that initial consultation, you've already made that connection with them with that social media. That's something that I'm going to start to do in my business. Caleb, did you have something you wanted to say there?
I apologize. It was just something actually along those lines with Instagram is interesting. Again, in our world demographic, we're getting referrals from people that are following us on Instagram, but they're referring their grandparents and their parents is what we're seeing. And I think Swihart was killing the Instagram thing off of hashtags and stuff in his area and stuff. That's kind of off topic here, I think, maybe, but I thought that was interesting. Like Hiner's concept there, at least, is like we're seeing that to some extent, except it's referring upwards in generation.
That exact thing where kids are following me because they're into that luxury lifestyle, and then their dad goes, "Hey, we need a landscaper," and kids are jumping, "Oh, I got somebody for you." So
honestly, like I don't know, a lot of guys here have kids, but my kids are still young, and I feel like when that day comes and they're going to refer me somebody, if I don't take who they choose or who they follow on Instagram at that point, it's just they're never going to stop nagging about it. So they want to almost be like, because they feel like it's cool, this company's big on Instagram or whatever. So I think that the kids are definitely influencing, teenagers, early 20s are definitely influencing a lot of their parents' decisions when it comes to this, because the parents are like, oh, you know what? Okay, you think they do good work? Yeah, I've been following them, whatever. They're referring you. They're doing all the legwork, and you've never exchanged any kind of conversation with these people, right? So it's definitely, they feel like they know you because it's a different world. Like the parents are still going to open the yellow pages, but that's it. Same thing. Definitely early 20s are upselling us big time. So,
Dan, you did mention that you, for your employees, that you do have a list of questions that they can refer to, because it's questions that you want them to ask if so that they don't forget. What do those questions do for you, or do you kind of have anticipated responses to those questions that you can kind of dig further with your employees? Like what does that look like for you?
So those questions are kind of like brainless questions in a way that I don't want them. It's easy, like you can get real excited about what's going on and forget to ask the really, really simple questions that are right in front of you. Do they have irrigation? Do they have a dog fence? I mean, we used to miss, the simple low hanging fruit is the one sometimes you miss the most, but they're sometimes the most important, in regards to the design. So that sheet has just, tons of things about, is there, what kind of drops there are? Is there a septic system? It goes through, drainage. It goes through I can't remember all the things that are on it, but it's not questions. It's more like as a checklist for the designer. They're not things some of our things that we would bring up with the client, but most of them are things that we would walk around and check after we're done with the consultation. But there are some questions on there, that are specific to the homeowner, that revolve around like budget and just high level things that they can have something to write down, because this sheet is actually stapled onto the front of a folder that is the client's folder through the duration of the sales process.
Gotcha. Interesting. And Jeremy, you said that you just show up with a notepad and your own ears. Can you expand on that? What information are you trying to draw from your client? What are you getting into? Because you obviously have a system in place that you can then take that. Do you offer them a design on the spot and tell them, like, kind of try to show them visually what that looks like?
So by the time I've gotten there, we've already discussed, what they're doing, what their budget is, what design fees could be. All that's already been discussed. So basically I'm just knocking on the door and saying, hey, nice to meet you. Let's take a look at what you got. So then we go out back and see their space. I now have on my website where clients can book a consultation with me or my other designer. And basically they have to go on there and fill out a series of questions before they can even book with us. So we've kind of gotten to the bottom of a lot of this stuff prior to me getting out there, which is really nice. And then I kind of have that. As soon as I pull up, I can pull up those notes on the email that it sends me and just kind of go down the list and remind myself. So I think I might add some questions like what Dan was talking about, just some simple no-brainer stuff that they can kind of do more legwork for us on the front end. That's kind of nice. But yeah, it's pretty natural. I mean, I don't really think about it, to be honest. I've done it so many times that it's just, you knock on the door and you just start getting into it, and you discuss what they want. And so basically I'm there at that point. At first meeting, I want to sell a design. That's, we've already discussed, like they have to kind of agree that they're willing to pay a minimum design fee of $500. But when we get there, at least we're going to get that $500 if it's a simple project, but it could be $2,000, depending on how, complexity. So we're just trying to sell the design and get things rolling at that first consultation. That's what I'm up to when I'm there.
No, Jeremy, let me ask you, because I'm like I said, I'm struggling with this now while I'm putting these systems in place now. But because I have my basic 2D design fee of $500, and are you going on site for that fee as well? Because the way I did it is like my basic 2D is just allocation of space. Pavers here, pavers there. We're not checking grade. We're not doing anything like that. Do you do that in that as well? Because that's what I'm trying to draw the line of. At what point I definitely want to get them in on the design initially, because it makes my job easier, and it allows me to really create something that I think is best for them. Not when you get this one plan that's been put together by God knows who, and you're like, okay, I had a client draw one once. I'm like, look, even if you send me a sketch, and he drew it himself and he thought he was like an architect, and I put it into my system, I scaled it. I'm like, okay, well, it's 2,200 square feet. No, it's not that much. Like, dude, you drew it and I put it to scale. It's 2,200 square feet. So are you going on site and doing all this at that basic 2D or whatever the case is?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the point where I don't have to go yet. So,
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we still have to go and measure and look, but it's not to say we're doing a big pool job design for $500, but simple patios and stuff like that.
We've got them broken into tiers. I don't know if that helps you or not. We'll do like a $500, $1,500, and a $2,000 kind of. Those are our tiers. But a $500 one would be like no pool, patio, landscape, just around a house. Not a lot of grade changes, but like for that $500, I'm going at you trying to get the job. We're pricing, we're picking material, we're picking colors, textures. We want the job. So for every tier, we're collecting that right at the first appointment. So we don't move forward with any measuring or design work until we've received that payment in full for the whole design. The payment is not refunded in any way towards the work. It's a separate section it's like art. It's worth something. So, but then for those tiers, that is where, each tier is going at, like, we want the job for each tier. And as the work increases, that's where you bump up to another tier. Our ones we've been hitting a lot are the $2,000 ones, because that's a pool and a outdoor kitchen and a lot of grade changes. But I would think for every one you're doing, like, I don't know if you have any other higher tiers, but I would say, like, for that $500, I would go after them and try to fully get the job.
Yeah, well, I have four tiers now, so that's literally what I've been putting together, because I'm at that point right now where I'm trying to set my standards, let's say, and because I was giving too much. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll put it in 3D just because I want to show you my vision. And then they were coming into the office, and I have to say 85% of the time, the client's like, you know what? Nobody showed us this in 3D. Like, we got the job. It didn't matter the price, anything. But that 15%
menu this year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem is that 15% that wasted our time, that 15% that took pictures of our stuff, just got under my skin and ruined it for the other 85%. So that's why now everything's through design. So, like, I have my tier of basics. Just, you know what, you don't know where your pool's gonna go or where your pavers are gonna go. That's what $500 is. It's gonna tell you where things will go. But there's no heights, there's no nothing. Just that's where things will go, and because it's the same price that a pool contractor would charge just for a pool implantation plan. And then after we have like to be somewhat competitive, we have like our 850, which would give you the same thing but with elevations. And then we jump to the 3Ds, which are I have like my 3D, which is just one paver choice, let's say, throughout the project. And then what I did to protect my brand locally is I did like the Zamco signature, which is like, it jumps to double the price and it's in the 3,000 some odd range. Where at that point, I was very protective of my inserts and my mixing of pavers and all that. And I was giving away too many ideas. And I was protective about it, I feel, for nothing, because the clients weren't remembering what I was saying enough not in enough detail to give it to another contractor or finding the contractors to do it. So I figured once I put it on paper and they're going to have this physical copy, at that point, I charge for it. That I just learned that I don't really care if I made my 3,500 or 4,000. Like, go, if you want to find somebody to try to pull this off, then good luck. And I have no problem with that. I got paid for my time.
There's serious value in design, and the people that get it. Yeah.
For sure. I think everything should be designed. Well, you guys, there's was it Water and Earth or Wind and Earth? Matt from, I think it's Water and Earth Landscaping Yeah. Well, Matt, I mean, it was what kind of put it all together for me was when Matt said up in California, nobody will even quote on a job without a plan. If there isn't a plan made, or if they're not being hired for a plan, they will not even quote on it. And the homeowners themselves have been conditioned that way, where they will not start a project without the first step being, okay, plans. And I think that a lot of contractors now, with how many programs are out there, I feel like that's going to be the norm in 3 years from now. Our industry is going to be plan ran 100%. And I think it's great because it's definitely getting clients a lot more serious. We're getting a lot less people that are bored and just want to let's see what it would cost. Okay, well, if it's costing you that minimum of $500, you might want to only call when you're really serious and ready to do it.
I kind of relate it to the, if you're building a house and you have to buy the plans ahead of time, usually it's
100%.
You hire an architect, you hire a professional to do it. I mean, we're in most cases, we're doing projects that, are large, and it's hard to estimate them without a design. Like you've been saying, it's really hard to put an actual price on something that's not designed out properly. So I'm trying to get better at that, because like I said, I'm not a designer, so sometimes it's difficult to bring a designer in or wait the lead time, so I'll just sketch something, or I'll try to put something together. So if it's just hardscape, I can usually do something fairly quick, and I'm honestly selling craftsmanship, and that's kind of what I'm really focusing on, is the type of work we do, the one-stop shop we can kind of offer, and that's working pretty well. And then we bring a designer in to do the design part, because that's not my forte. So anyway, it is. I've done enough building and construction type stuff where it's just easier. I just try to say, hey, it's just like if you were building a house, you have to have something to go off of to build the budget off of. So that seems to work really well when trying to sell the design for me.
Well, guys, I said that I'd have you out here 10 after. It is 10 after. I just want to do it quick. You have 10 seconds to answer this question before we go into closing remarks, closing comments. 10 seconds. Red flags with customers. What comes up in that initial consultation that makes you say, this is not a customer for me. I am not going to continue this. And because Mike, Paver King, you discussed it earlier, what are those red flags that come up on a job site? Or on that first consultation?
Okay, 10 seconds. If they haven't cleaned up their dog shit, then that's a red flag for me.
That's a good one.
That is.
Sure, it is. It's if you don't care enough, then I'm going to tromp right. It's just a red flag for me. It's generally people I don't want to work for.
Perfect. Dan over at the.dan.wasson.
There's a lot of red flags, but one of them is time frame. I'm like, hey, I want this project done. Can you start in 4 weeks? If they haven't thought about like how busy things are, and with all of us contractors, every trade is busy. That takes time to design. That's a red flag for us. Definitely.
Matt at _the_artist.
Oh, if they know the price of materials, if they've done so much research to where they know, that this paver is $558 and this paver is $622.
Oh my gosh. Or they want to buy their own materials. They want
to buy the materials.
I hate that.
I'm out on that.
Red flag, but like just a red flag that they know the pricing of like hard materials.
Perfect. Craig Scheller at Scheller Outdoor Living.
Well, I wasn't going to say this, but yeah, my buddy's a contractor. He can buy this for me or whatever. Yeah. Or, sometimes it's I have, 1,000 pictures I found on Pinterest but I got to one time and they already had a bunch of lines painted out in the yard. I was like, okay, obviously you've gotten a bunch of people here drawing all their lines in your yard so you can see what you're doing. So that's usually a red flag for me.
Perfect. Tony at Zamco Group.
If they're engineers, like, I don't know what it is.
Attorneys.
If they're professional engineers or attorneys, oh my God. Yeah. No, it's guys, I'm not saying they're not saying everyone's engineers like this, but everybody who's been an engineer has known more about my profession than me.
Oh yeah.
Anybody who's an engineer knows that, and they ask you like overly structural. I had one that said, well, should we put 24 inches of concrete under all of this? And I'm like, for what? Like, for what? Well, because it's stronger. Okay, sure. You know what? Yeah. So engineers are a no-go. Like, thank you for your time. And that's it.
And Jeremy at J Squared Outdoor.
I think the big one I'm getting lately is how much would it save me if I did stamped concrete?
Yes.
Or decks.
Or decks, yeah.
Decks are more right now, actually, the lumber with it.
Yeah.
And as somebody else in the comments said, how about if I can do some of the work? That's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, yes. How about if I dig out the hole for you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm home, so I could help you guys. Like
tear the deck down.
You just deliver the plants.
Yeah.
Plants, and I'll plant them.
Yeah.
Excellent, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone go follow these guys, and we're going to do closing remarks. Anything that you think did not get said during this time, and where can our audience go find you, or takeaways that you got from this conversation? Anything that you want to leave the audience with, and where can our audience go and find you? We'll start in reverse order there, starting with Jeremy at J Squared Outdoor on Instagram.
I'm going to be looking really hard at front doors from here on out. You can find me at J Squared Outdoor on Instagram.
Thank you. Tony at Zamco Group.
Well, you could find us at Zamco Group. And I think the most interesting thing that I heard was actually keeping the clients next to each other. I thought that was very, very interesting. I never thought of that because I've seen like that eye contact where they're trying to speak to each other and it's really awkward. So keeping them next to each other is definitely something that I'm going to be looking forward to going forward.
Definitely. Craig Scheller at Scheller Outdoor Living.
Well, one thing I was going to mention, I've gotten pretty good at working the husband and wife a little bit. So like trying to figure out who really wants what and who's actually making the decision. And there's been situations where I've actually, this was a long time ago, but I was having a discussion with the husband and wife. I actually stepped between them and talked to the wife. I was like, I looked back at him. I said, okay, we're going to talk to you and we need to check. What do you want? Because it was like this back and forth. It was a very bold move. Honestly, it was one of the boldest moves I've ever made. I got the job. But anyway, that was kind of fun. I'm at Scheller Outdoor Living.
Excellent. Thank you. And Matt Hiner at _Yardist.
Yeah, find me there on Instagram, either on the Yardist or at Hiner Outdoor Living. So, great time. Always a pleasure to be in this company. So, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And Dan at the.dan.wasson.
It's a great conversation, Matt. I think it's interesting that selling is less about like how much you know about the pavers or how much you know about all the things you're selling, but like it's a lot more about maybe not talking, listening, paying attention if there's doors or shoes or if they're wearing heels or whatever. But there's a lot more to selling than just what you know. There's that emotional and listening aspect to it that I think I'm definitely going to pay more attention to doors and shoes from now on. But I think that's all good stuff. You can follow me at the Dan Wasson or at Wasson Nursery.
Thank you. And Mike at Paver_King, close us out.
I concluded from this group tonight that I need to learn how to use a zip level. I think that was some good information, maybe feedback to me. And I like Dan's idea about the list. I've never had a list in 30 years, and I think it's great to have that, like a basic question there, like the dog fence. I mean, I've dug up a lot of stuff in my life and destroyed a lot of things because I didn't have a basic knowledge or I didn't pass the basic knowledge on to the crew. I think that was a great piece of information I'm definitely going to implement so that we have a better way to pass on information. And you can find me at Paver King or wherever there's decks being destroyed. Any of those places, I'm good. So, and I appreciate being part of the group. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us and listening in, those that tune in live and those that are rewatching this on our YouTube channel. Go follow these guys because they put in a lot of time into the podcast, showing up, giving you their advice, and then these roundtable rallies. Thank you. I can't thank you guys enough for showing up to these and actually wanting to be a part of these. So thank you. And you can check out the podcast. Oh, also Caleb Auman at Auman Landscape LLC on Instagram. He was in here earlier, and he's also got the Kid Contractor podcast now available on wherever you can find podcasts. So check him out as well. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.